So I guess I should tell the story about how Stonecreek came about. Stonecreek Studios. That was the headquarters for Boyz II Men. When I was working with the Boyz before Stonecreek, I was helping each one of them put studios in their houses and get the gear, configure it, and all that. And at one point, Nate said, "We need a bigger place, some place that we can get together and record new records and do a record label and production and all that." And I said, "All right, let me see what I can find." And at that time, KAJEM was the big recording studio in Gladwin. They had an SSL. And from what I understand, they weren't doing too well, and they just wanted to kind of get out of the business. So I knew a bunch of the partners there, and I was talking to them, and they were telling me how much they would like for the place. So it was like over $1 million they wanted for, and for $1 million you were taking possession of a lease. You didn't own the building, and you got the gear that was inside there. So I had them put a list together of all the gear, and I figured it out, and I don't think it was worth more than $200,000, if that, for everything. So I went back to the Boyz and I was talking to them, and they said, "Well, can you figure out a different angle, on this? $1 million. We don't want to spend that right now." And I said, "Okay." So I did some digging and digging, and I found out that once KAJEM's lease was up and they had to leave the building, it was going to cost them $30,000 to demo everything that was in it, because that was part of the lease, to bring it back to the way it was. And so if somebody paid them $30,000 and took over the lease, they could get the building. So I talked to them about doing that, and the Boyz said, "Yeah, we'll do that." So we paid the $30,000, and then we were going to take over the lease of the building, but there was not going to be any gear in the building. Everything would be out of it. So before the Boyz took possession of the place, KAJEM had an auction for all the gear that was in there. So me and Nate went to the auction, and we saw, they were auctioning off all the gear. And Nate decided to buy a few things. So he bought the Atari MTR-90, the 2-inch 24-track. He bought the Studer. I'm pretty sure it was a Studer. It may not have been. And then the last thing is the console went up for sale, and nobody bought it. It was a 48-channel E-Series SSL. And Nate said, "You know what? We should talk to the guy who's doing the auction." So we talked to Ham Brocious. He was the guy who was doing this auction. And we came up with, and Ham said, "If you buy the console from me, I'll make sure SSL comes in and goes through the console and everything would be perfect." So we come up with a price. It was $135,000. And Nate thought it was a good deal because the console's there, it's wired up. Didn't have to put a new console in there. But Ham never came through with the, "I'll go through the console and make everything work." He said, "I said that, but I had no authority to do it." And good thing Nate was in the room with me when he made that promise to me. So, but we got through it. Everything was fine. But here's where it got interesting. Once Nate bought the console, he turns to me and he says, "I want to get the studio up and running in about a month and have a grand opening." And now you got to understand, everything was gone. All the rack gear, all the speakers, all the amplifiers, microphone, everything was gone from the place except for the console and a tape machine. So he says, "Okay, I want you to do it. Start. So I told him, I need some money. They put $100,000 into my bank account, and I start buying stuff. And I also coordinated getting the wiring all redone properly. There were some issues with it. And we also had people come in and paint and redo the place. And if you look on this YouTube channel, I have a video of KAJEM Studios before the Boyz bought it and then after the Boyz bought it. So you can see that, what was done. So I had a month to get this all together. And I had the tape machine redone by Gene Kane at Phoenix Audio Services. He went through it and made it incredible. It sounded better than it ever did. Then we went through the console, cleaned everything up. And we had a grand opening. And everybody, the who's who of Philadelphia, came to Stone Creek. And you got to understand, Stone Creek is right by a creek, and it's just one road that goes to it. It's back in the woods in Gladwin. You would think you were way back in the woods, but you're close to civilization. We had valets there, so people pull the car up. The valet would park your car, but they were parking it up and down the road. And I was running around, just making sure everything was going well. But everybody was there, everybody. And then when the thing was all over with, I mean, it's funny because they had a Philly theme, so they had soft pretzels and tasty cakes and things like that. So it's kind of interesting. But once everything was done, the next thing was running the studio. And they knew my wife, Daria, had run big studios before. So they said, let's get your wife to do it. And she just had my daughter, Kira, and she's like, I just don't want to do this anymore. And the guys just pleaded with her. And when I say pleaded, they begged her. They said, no, we need people that we know. And she said, oh, okay. So she was the studio manager for the studio. And in fact, like on the YouTube channel too, you'll see there's a Boyz II Men video, and there's a little clip of her in her office doing things. First artist we had in there was Color Me Bad. Artists come in and the air conditioning system goes down. And Nate turns to me, he says, I don't care what you do, you got to get that air conditioning working. And I had to run around and figure it out and find people and all that, but I got it up and running. I never was officially on Boyz II Men's payroll, but I was always the person that was in charge of everything. They paid me by buying gear from me and that. And in fact, sometimes I would stay overnight at the oh, that was funny because there was one recliner that Nate had that was a massage recliner, and it was in his room, and I would go and just lay in there and fall asleep. And I remember long time after the place got went out of business, I was at the Hooters studio, and that same recliner was in their studio, and I sat in. I go, this feels familiar. Where'd you get it from? And they said, oh, we got it from the Stone Creek when they had the auction. They auctioned everything off. So that was funny that I slipped in that thing. But that's kind of the Stone Creek thing. We had like Paul McCartney, Elton John, and LL Cool J, and I mean huge acts that were supposed to come in or came in. We had was it Mariah Carey husband? He came in for the record label thing. So you got to think 1995, 95, 96, well, it was 95. The Boyz were on top of the world. They had in top 10. I think they had 5 like hit songs, whether they did it or they collaborated with somebody else. So it was a huge undertaking, but I got it all done. They were happy, and there's that's my Stone Creek story. One other thing about Stone Creek that I thought was interesting, when the Boyz were in there, because Stone Creek was the studio, and then there was a whole complex of other commercial woodworking and other businesses in there. But the whole facility was offered to them for $2 million. And at that time, they said, no, we're going to pass on it. It doesn't make sense for us to buy it. But now I heard the whole facility, I think, sold for $150 million. And they're going to make, I think, townhouses or something like that. So the real estate is worth a ton of money now. But it would have been wise for them to buy it when they could have, but you never know. So thought I'd add that.